Hey y'all, if you're new here, I'm Alicia. Welcome to the family. Today we're going to be doing a book recommendation video. If you like this book, then try this book. We're going to talk about 5 books that you like, and I'm going to recommend 5 others that are similar in style, in writing, and concept that you may also like. So I have quite an array of books here for you. We have fantasy, we have memoirs, we have science fiction. So I hope you're ready for this video. So without any further ado, let's get right into it. The first one that I'm going to start off with is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. And the book that I'm going to recommend to you if you do like that book is going to be The Beauty and Breaking by Michelle Harper. Now I know The Midnight Library is contemporary fantasy and The Beauty and Breaking is a non-fiction memoir, so they're completely separate genres. But hear me out. Although I know that most people love The Midnight Library because of the concept of the library, but I think that the people that resonated the most with The Midnight Library did so because of the message behind the book. So although The Beauty and Breaking doesn't have a magical library in here, it is similar in tone and in the message. So in this book we follow Michelle Harper, who is a Black emergency room physician, and the chapters are divided into separate stories of things that happen in the ER, and at the end of each chapter she gives you a valuable lesson that she learned from those ER interactions. So if the platitudes within The Midnight Library resonated with you, this is a book that's equally filled with platitudes and that come from real life situations that happen in the emergency room. And trust me, it's an array of difficulties she faces and lessons that she learned that can really apply to anyone, even though she is an ER doctor. Don't be intimidated by this. Even though we are following Michelle on a day-to-day as an ER doctor, it's not a book that goes over your head and it's not filled with all this medical jargon that you don't understand. Nothing like that. It's a very personal account of her life and the lessons that she's learned. So for the next one, if you really liked Stephen King's The Shining, I recommend that you actually pick up In the Woods by Tana French. These are 2 books that are sort of in different genres. In The Shining, follow Jack Torrance and his family as, Jack is kind of descending into madness and there's some supernatural elements in here. And In the Woods, there's no supernatural elements. In the Woods is a crime thriller novel where we follow 2 detectives as they're trying to solve the mystery of a young girl who was killed in the woods. We also find out that one of the detectives on the case, Detective Ryan, used to previously live in that town. And when he was a kid, his 2 friends went missing when all 3 of them were out in the forest, and he was the only one that was found and came back. So as Detective Ryan and Detective Maddox are trying to solve the murder mystery of the girl who was killed in the present, they start to think that maybe this murder might have a connection to the previous missing people. So it's definitely a little bit different than The Shining, but I think the reason that you would really like this if you like The Shining is because Tana French's character work is impeccable. It's fantastic. Right from the beginning, I was gripped by these characters. And just like Stephen King, they're both very, very slow moving novels. They both tend to go on tangents, but what's very similar about both of them is that their character work is impeccable. The way that Tana French is able to create realistic, nuanced, complex, and morally gray characters is fantastic. Just the characters and the relationships in here were done so wonderfully and so intricately. That's all I'll say. So if you like The Mortal Instruments by Cassandra Clare, I'm going to recommend to you Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno Garcia. Now, The Mortal Instruments is an urban fantasy by Cassandra Clare, and there are 6 total books in that series. Certain Dark Things is only one standalone, also urban fantasy, mixed in with some neo-noir crime thriller aspects. The reason that I'm recommending to you Certain Dark Things if you like The Mortal Instruments, it's because of the writing style and the atmosphere that's created. The atmosphere is very similar to that of The Mortal Instruments, and the writing style is great. It's readable, it's digestible, and the story moves at a medium pace throughout the entire novel. So Certain Dark Things is a dark, multiple POV urban fantasy about vampires. And what I really loved about this book is that not only is it urban fantasy, but it also has this crime neo-noir element to it that really makes it gritty and really makes it stick and keeps you motivated to keep reading and find out what's going to happen. On top of that, I really love that we have all of these different vampire lords and myths from around the world that are included in this book. This is definitely a standalone fantasy book that takes vampire lore to the next level. One thing that I do have to say that is different from The Mortal Instruments is that this doesn't have a heavy central romance in it. So if you love The Mortal Instruments from the central romance, this may not be for you because the romance in this book isn't central. There is a little bit of romance that develops, but it is very tender and slow burn. It's not angsty you like the romances that Cassandra Clare creates, if you like the atmosphere of the Mortal Instruments, this is one that I think you'll really enjoy. And on top of that, it's a standalone. So if you need a standalone fantasy in between reads, this is one I recommend you check out. So if you liked To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers, or just Becky Chambers in general, I will recommend to you The Vanished Birds by Simon Jimenez. The reason that I'm recommending The Vanished Birds if you like Becky Chambers in general is because not only are they both science fiction novels, but what both of these books do really well is that it's that slice of life in space type of feel where you're following the crew members and learning what it's like to be in space. And the focus of these books, it's really on relationships and on character development and on found family. I do have to say though that if you've read Becky Chambers and you found her stories to be a little bit too fluffy, a little bit too good feely, I feel like you'll really like The Vanished Birds because they are similar in tone and they do focus on the same themes, but The Vanished Birds specifically tends to be a little bit grittier. One thing I do have to say is that The Vanished Birds is a debut novel, and holy moly, it's so freaking good. So the basic premise of The Vanished Birds is that we have a captain of a transportation ship called Nia Imani who makes rounds throughout the universe, dropping off and picking up goods and such. She takes multiple lovers in different planets, and in one particular planet, one of her lovers entrusts her with this kid that just came out of nowhere. They don't know where he came from, he didn't have a ship, he doesn't speak, and they don't know where he came from. So Nia goes ahead and takes him in with the purpose of finding his family and just figuring out where he's from. She starts to build this very strong connection with this boy, and ultimately we'll learn that this boy is part of this bigger plot and bigger plan that can potentially present problems for Nia and her crew. So that's the basic premise of the book. It's definitely a book that is very slow paced, and it does tend to meander a lot because there is a lot of focus on characters here. It's a character driven novel, so if you're someone that's looking for a plot driven book, this is not one to pick up. This is one where definitely the plot kind of takes a backseat to the character development. We zigzag through the plot and meander quite a bit before we get to the meat of the plot at the end. But it's definitely one that just wowed me, and I highly recommend you check it out. The last recommendation that I have for you is that if you like I Know Why the Cagebird Sings by Maya Angelou, then I think you'll really enjoy Ordinary Girls by Yakira Diaz. Both I Know Why the Cagebird Sings and Ordinary Girls are memoirs, and they both follow the authors during a particular period of their time, and they're both packed with so much heart and so much emotion and so much heartbreak and so much life. One thing that I'll say about both is that it takes a lot of courage to write such introspective and hard-hitting memoirs. Both of these novels include moments of happiness and of strength and of support, but they equally show times where they both faced adversity, and both Yakira Diaz and Maya Angelou skip straight through the bullshit. They don't sugarcoat anything, they talk about their experiences, whether they're difficult to hear or not, and they really give it to you straight, but also really illuminate on their healing process. So those were all the books that I had for you today. Let me know if you've read any of these or if you agree with me. If you made it this far, go ahead and leave a bird emoji down below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye!